So, hi everyone. Welcome to WAKEup Concept. My name is Ifiwana. Our goal with this show is to ignite human consciousness, to offer insight, inspiration, encouragement, and support. There's no better time than now to actually discuss the issues and the challenges that is facing Africans, Black people, mixed race people globally, but most importantly, here in Finland. My guest today is Michaela Moua. Michaela, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, it's good to be here.
So, why don't we kick this off by you telling a little bit about yourself, and then of course, your relation with the Black Lives Matter protest that happened a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Michaela Moua, and I'm a senior officer at the Non-Discrimination Ombudsperson's Office. And we just recently published a survey a report on discrimination faced by people of African descent in Finland, especially in the labor market, in employment, and in education. So that's just happened 2 weeks ago. And I'm also a solution-focused therapist, and I work with clients who suffer from the effects of racism, the mental health effects of racism. And I'm also an activist. I try to do issues around human rights issues, and specifically anti-racism, but also, all human rights issues. But I would say my expertise is in anti-racism issues. And I'm a mother of a beautiful 7-year-old brown girl. And what else? I feel like I wear so many hats, but maybe that's the main hats. Yeah. And then about the Black Lives Matter protest that happened in Helsinki, is it now 2 weeks ago? It was a beautiful event. I think it's important to mention that Black Lives Matter is originally, it was established in 2013 when a Black teenage boy was shot and killed by the police in the US. So it's not something that just popped up, but it might be something that people are just hearing about now because it's become a global movement. It was started by 3 Black queer women, and their reason was to put the most marginalized voices in the center, which is typically Black women and Black trans women. But those killings are not getting that much media coverage, but that's also something that's happening, and the media is for some reason not choosing to highlight. But the main thing about the Black Lives Matter movement, it's a human rights movement. And I think it's just a beautiful thing now how globally so many countries have kind of reacted to the situation, the killing of George Floyd. And even though that's kind of what ignited it, I think every country has their own problems, their own structural racism issues that are happening. And also in Finland now, we are starting to have a completely different kind of conversation around racism, which I really am happy about, because it's something that needs to be talked about to actually have some change happen.
Do we really have serious race issues in Finland?
Absolutely. There is racism is contextual, so it's different in every context. Finland has an extremely long racist history with the Sami people and the Roma people. The Roma people have been here for 500 years. The Sami people are the indigenous people, the only indigenous group people in Europe. And there are still some very problematic things happening with the Sami people. I'm not an expert, but this is just a facts of Finnish history, which is really not told to us. It's not in the history books of children. So absolutely. And then you also have the newer groups of people who have come here because of love or because of work or because of human rights issues as refugees, etc. But yes, Finland has quite a long racist history, especially with the Sami people and the Roma people. There was a culture of assimilation where both of these groups' languages were taken away. They were forced to learn Finnish language. Families were separated. Children were taken into school homes. And what does that do to any community where when families are separated from each other? I mean, that causes generational trauma. They were forced to change their way of life, their way of making a living, to assimilate into the Finnish culture. So this is the one part of history, for instance, which is not told to us. And of course, this racist history mirrors the racism in Finnish society today. So yes, absolutely, there's an issue, and it's not just me and my feelings about the situation, but also the Agency of Fundamental Rights of the European Union published a survey on called "Being Black in the EU," where they studied 12 European countries, and Finland came out the most racist country as far as I think it was 63% of the people who answered the survey had experienced racist harassment in the past 5 years. So we came up on top of this result. And then there's also the report we just published with the Ombudsman's office. So, and it's you can't deny research and studies and surveys. So absolutely, there's work to do.
Do you know the reason why this is?
I think the history is one of the reasons, and also it's not like Finland is somehow separate from the global, for instance, global viewpoint of Eurocentric and how like Europe and Eurocentrist values are valued versus other cultures and other types of other ethnicities, etc. It can be seen in our the imagery. If I think, for instance, about the Roma and the Sami people and also Black people, how they have been shown ever since I was a little, I was young. They are always shown in very caricature-like way images, very stereotypical, very infantile. The pictures for instance, when I went to school, I was around 8 years old. I remember we had the ABCD on the wall, and on the N letter there was a caricature. There was the N word first of all. There was the N letter, the N word, and like a caricature picture of a Black person in a loincloth. So this is not something that's like far away in history of how people of color, Black people, brown people, Sami people, indigenous people, Roma people are seen. So if you grow up in a society where this imagery is everywhere, for instance, or how different cultures or how different ethnicities are talked about, how they're viewed, and you're socialized into that. That's what you think is normal, and you start to believe those things. Just like with anything else, when you're socialized to think that something is normal, for instance, So that's one issue. It's generational to me.
Well, that's really something that, of course, the issue that we're discussing today, because the killing of George Floyd obviously have invoked so many different kind of emotions in people. So people are enraged, people are angry, people are empowered. So these are some of so many different kind of emotions that we are going through now through this over the last couple of weeks as a result of the killings in the US. So with that, I'm just going to come back to the point that you mentioned earlier, which is about the discussions you're having now. So what sort of discussion are you having? Is it happening in your workplace, with friends, colleagues, family? And what are the point going forward?
Well, I mean, this is the work I've done for years. So this is what I've talked about for years in all my circles, my work, my family, my friends, you know. So this is not something new to me. What is new is that the general public, so basically white people, are now, because of the movement, are not getting defensive immediately, are not saying things like, well, I have a Black husband, I can't be racist. Well, I have brown children, I can't be racist. Well, I worked in Kenya for 2 weeks as a volunteer in 1983, so I can't be racist. They're actually stopping and listening and thinking of ways in which maybe they are playing a part in, maybe they do have some stereotypical racist thought processes that they don't, that they've never really kind of looked in the mirror and asked themselves, because so many people, because there's a global movement of Black and brown people of color now saying, no, this is actually the reality. And I think there's much more reception, like people are more receptive to be like introspective and think of what I'm like, okay, I have good intentions, but am I somehow still a part of the problem, which is the first step. There hasn't been any civil rights movements or any like human rights movements that have been successful without the privileged, you know, like with the gay liberation movement, it required straight people to also fight for the rights of gay and trans people. With the civil rights movement, it required white people in the US to be like, no, there needs to be. So it does always require the people in power to get involved and become allies to any struggle. So I think that's the main thing. I think white Finnish people are much more receptive now to have these conversations and to have them on a much broader level than just, well, I'm not racist because I'm not out in the street calling someone names, you know, to try to understand like how vast the phenomenon of racism is. Yes, there's that, but there's also violence, and there's also microaggressions, and there's also racism that happens in the systems of employment, of education, etc. So I think that's the main thing, is that people are now more receptive to kind of think about how they are maybe complicit to the problem.
Well, I think this is very interesting, because if you look at you know, what has been happening, at least from my point of view, right, as an immigrant in Finland. And then my way of looking at this is that, of course, there is also a kind of two-way stream to, like you mentioned in your point, that some of them are complacent. Some of them thought that, okay, the fact that I don't call people N-word or say stuff, that's just enough. But in reality, there is ignorance, there is assumption, you know, which of course me myself can testify to, that people might, you know, be assuming stuff, and as we probably know, assumption is not fact, right? And that has also become, to my understanding, a big issue, because I realize that even professionally, the people I work with, right? If you look at their social sort of circle and the things they do and how they relate with other people, like Africans like me, I still see that there's still a long way to go. Even as simple as starting a conversation is so difficult, right? So, and that's a bigger, to my sort of understanding, is a bigger challenge, because, like I said, assumption is not fact. And the idea that you need to sit in your own corner and say, okay, I know you guys, you are, you know, Africans or Black people, you're not serious or something like that. I'm not going to engage, right? And then the Africans are, you know, probably in their own corners were saying like, okay, I know you have no respect. You don't even know who I am. You don't know how hard I work in this country. I pay my tithes. I'm building company. All these things matters not because you don't want to. You simply don't care. So I think that there has to be some way that we can, come together in the middle, because at the end of the day, when there is a little bit of understanding, but that understanding also has to come with, start with discussion at some point. So when that happens, I think that, things will be becoming a little bit more better. And then how do we initiate this kind of conversation to find a common ground where we can come together?
Well, I think that's what's happening now. Like I mentioned earlier, there is that introspection going on in seeing what kind of prejudice thought processes do I actually have? And do I want to have them? And why do I have them? Are they logical? Like I said, just because you're not calling someone names in the street, that's not like a huge anti-racist thing to do. That's like the minimum. That's just like how people should be. You shouldn't get like points for not being in the streets and calling people names. And I mean, it's always it's really unfair. I think sometimes it's seen as like racism should be fixed by people who experience racism, and it's not possible because people who experience racism don't have the power to stop it. So I think we're in a good place now because people are open to have those conversations, to listen. So I think now is an opportune time to try to have those conversations and just take advantage of the situation, because like we don't know if this is just a trend. We don't know if this is just a passing trend. So we really need to take advantage, which I hope it's not, because this should be the normal. I hope this turns into the new normal where people, and not just with anti-racism, but with everything, like with gay and trans rights, with migrants' rights, with refugee rights. I mean, human rights in general. We should strive for Finland to be a more safer country for everybody. So I think now is a really good time to start those conversations and see where it goes from there.
Definitely. With that, let's, if you may, let's go back a little bit about your upbringing, and then of course your experience growing up, because I know you must have, gone through a lot, even if, you've been, really good in trying to inspire other younger ones like you, misraised ones like you. So if you could just touch a little bit about that, and that would be interesting. Sure. And then, of course, I would be happy if you could mention something about your professional sports career that started off in Finland, and then
my life's been kind of all over the place ever since I can remember. I was born in Finland, but when I was 3, we moved to Zambia. Okay. My mom worked for the UN, and we lived there for 5 years, and then we came back here, and I finished my school here, and then I went to the States for university. I got a athletic scholarship to play basketball, and I was there for 4.5 years, and then after that I played professionally for about 10 years in Europe, in 7 different countries. So I've been very fortunate in the sense that both of my parents are they're still around, and for them it was very important that we appreciate both our Finnish heritage and our Côte d'Ivoire heritage, which I think has definitely shaped me to have strong roots in like both of my countries. We travel to Côte d'Ivoire about every 2 years and to visit family, and I of course I didn't realize it at the time, but as a black woman, a black girl growing up in Finland, it was very important to my identity, because no matter what I was going through, I always appreciated the beauty of both of my cultures. Yeah, I mean, it was a different place. I'm not going to say my age, but it was a different country 25 years ago, in the 80s or whatever, you know. I was literally always the only one. And racism was very outright then, you know. It was much easier to detect because people will call you names and people would point out, they would call you like horrible names.
Yeah.
And my parents, they didn't really have tools to, because I mean, my mom is white and my father is African, he's black. So they couldn't really understand my experience either because my mom was kind of this idealistic, I don't see color and we're all humans, which didn't really help me have a conversation about racism with her. It was too difficult for my mother to have that conversation. And also my father, his strategy was very, just work harder than them, be better than them. And so I couldn't have a conversation with either of my parents about it because to me, these were very much silencing mechanisms. Instead of having that difficult conversation with your child about their experiences in school, I was scared to go to school, you know. They rather used these strategies, which I've noticed now when I work with parents of Black and brown children. They have very similar strategies, which are actually not helpful for the child at all, because they're ways to silence the child and to not have that difficult conversation about racism. But I mean, I've been able to have these discussions now with my parents, and now I have a daughter of my own, and I've talked about her brownness to her so much that at one point she was like, "Mom, is brown your favorite color?" And, you know, but it's okay because she knows that she can always come to me. I'm never going to doubt her. We're always going to be, I'm already now giving her tools to understand her position in society. So it doesn't come. And it's also, if you're not able to have those conversations with your parents, it will then all of a sudden come as a surprise to you and you won't understand what's happening. And instead what I'm trying to do with my daughter is, so it won't be a big shock and surprise to her. And then she'll then one day come home, which of course will be heartbreaking for me, but she'll be like, "Okay, Mom, it happened now and I want to talk about it." And we'll be able to have that conversation. But this was a very strategic choice to me. I wanted to do differently than my parents had done with me. And of course, our parents, what do? They do the best they can.
Of course.
It's not like they intentionally necessarily, and I didn't realize it at the time. Of course, you get older and you start to understand the world better and understand that I actually was not able to ever have those conversations with my parents. And I wish I could have. And I definitely want my daughter to be able to have those conversations. So yeah, it was different. I'm hoping there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping it will be a different experience for my daughter to grow up in Finland. If we have a chance for my work, for instance, to move somewhere else for a while, I would love that as well, because I really want to give her that understanding of the world as not some faraway place somewhere, some scary place, but that, you know, the world is at your hands. I think that's what traveling does, especially living in a country, in a, you know, different country. But yeah. It was not always easy, but I think for me, what really gave me kind of was my superpower, I think, was that I always knew that the reality in Finland is not the reality globally, because I had lived in countries where Black people were doing everything. Black people were doctors, lawyers. So I had seen that representation and I knew that, well, it's this context. And I always kind of knew that I can still try to strive for things. And because I had that experience of a whole different kind of reality. So that is something that I feel is was always, no matter what was going on, I knew that there's other types of realities in the world. I don't know if did you understand what I was trying to say?
Definitely. Yeah. It came home very nicely. The thing is that, you know, just to follow up with few points that you just mentioned now, which I think is important to highlight a little bit more. So, you mentioned that your mom is very sort of realistic in the understanding that everyone is the same, and that
she was like very idealistic.
Idealistic, that you don't have to worry about that, just move on with life. And then with your dad, his view is that at work everyone, that's the way to silence them. Like how did that affect you? How did you actually apply those, or you were not really comfortable with those ideas?
I mean, for a child, you believe your parents.
Yeah.
But like I said, for me, there should still have been a conversation. I should have still been able to have a conversation with my parents about my experience as a mixed race kid in Finland, which they couldn't understand because my father, as a black man, he came here just to build a better life for his family.
Yeah.
He was always like, they're never going to accept me, and I'm fine with that, And then my mom, she had this kind of rosy picture of the world. And then I was born here, and I was like, no, I refuse to, I know my rights, so I refuse to just kind of be passive about, And that's probably why I'm even today very vocal about injustices in society, because I think my voice matters. I don't think any change is possible in society if the most marginalized people don't speak up. I did take to heed their what they told me. But I really wish I would have been able to talk to them about my experience more, have those difficult conversations, even just have them listen to me. So then what happens as a kid, you realize, okay, my parents are not really comfortable talking about racism that I experienced. So then you start hiding your experiences. Like there's so many things that I haven't told my parents until I was a grown up person about how I got chased down by skinheads from a train station, like just things that I was like, then you just come home and you're like, hi, everything's okay. Cause you're like, they're not gonna really want to talk about it because it's too difficult for them to kind of, and I understand it's hard for us to see our children go through any hardship, even at a sandbox. Yeah. When someone takes something out of my daughter's hand, even in that situation, I'm like, oh no, So of course, as parents, we don't want them to go through any hardship, but silencing that hardship and not, it's kind of like you as a parent just kind of then want to stay uncomfortable. You don't want to get uncomfortable. You don't want to have uncomfortable conversations. Situation, and that's not, to me, I think it's not the role of a child to protect the adults, So very important to kind of give tools to the kids and to be able to and open to have those difficult conversations.
There is a lot in there that you just unfold now, that you just open up now. So in your opinion, right, is it fair to say that with all these experiences that you've gone through, at least I have mine as well, as an immigrant here in Finland that came to actually build my life and, support and sometime maybe contribute back to where I came from to make the place even function better. But with all these experiences, is it fair to say then that Finland has come a long way?
I mean, there's still work to do, People always go to the point to where like, but Finland is a good country and so many things here are so well. Yes. I mean, just because there's still work to do doesn't mean that we're like, just because we're saying there's work to do, it doesn't mean we're saying that Finland is not a good country to live. Absolutely. Finland is an amazing country to live, but it doesn't mean that we're ready. There's still human rights issues here as well with trans people, for instance, with racism, systemic racism, and there's with people with disabilities. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think as a society, we should never think that we're ready, because no society is ever ready. Because society and culture is not like something static that it becomes ready at some point. No, because then our understanding of how things can be better increases, over time, over years of understanding different intersections of human rights issues, for instance, and then you try to shift it and change it to the better. So yes, some things are better. Of course, which it should be. For instance, the equality between men and women, we're getting close. You know, the euro is still not
quite the same.
I think it's like 86 cents. But when you think globally, it's about as close as it gets. So there's still a lot of work to do. And I think just now in this time, some very new things are made visible, because you can't really change things until they're made visible, like in the structures of employment, for instance, in racism that happens in recruiting because your name is not Finnish sounding, or in the labor market, how certain groups of people get stuck in certain low wage professions, and also like horizontally, it's much slower or very difficult to climb up the career ladder if you are black or brown, or if your name is different. So these are things that once they're made visible, then we can actually change those structures and see what can we change and stuff like that. So that's the thing. There's a lot of things here are really well, but there's still a lot of work to do.
I like your insight because, you know, even if this is for audience to obviously consume, but there are a lot of things that you're bringing up, which I think it will be worthwhile. It will be very important for you to kind of expatiate a bit. You mentioned that with the engagement from, the people like us, is not nearly enough. And I would say that that is so true. And I will seek your opinion on how we go forward from that.
There are organizations, there are NGOs.
Okay.
There are NGOs. What I see happening a lot is like, it's a little bit, what's the word? It's a little bit, the organizations are very like, organization for Ghanaians, organizations for Nigerians, organization for Cote d'Ivoirians. It's very, you have small organizations that are maybe just doing their own thing instead of kind of organizing together. I don't think organizing together takes away from still doing your own thing and kind of mobilizing around issues that you want to bring forward. Of course, elections are a major place of kind of affecting change, but I think it has to come from a larger mobilizing of the different country groups maybe. And then thinking of what is the policy we want to change? What are the things we want to move forward? Is there an interest in I'm sure you're much more well versed in politics and political parties from just what you just told me now, but understanding, and it's not easy because there's always that language barrier. There's information typically in English, but even the English information might not be all of the information. So of course you have to be able to get the information also. But I think, I think organizing in a larger way, and maybe I think, as for my experience as Afro-Fin, I feel like sometimes Africans and Afro-Fins, or Africans especially, kind of feel like, don't see that there could also be some kind of collaboration there. Because some of us are born here and speak the language, the way society sees us. I mean, when we experience racism, they don't ask me first, like, were you born here before I call you the N-word? Or are you here as a migrant or a refugee? No, society still sees us the same. So basically the issues we want to move forward are typically very similar. So I think there could also be a collaboration there, and that's what I'm really hoping also to understand that that could be a possibility for collaboration. But I do think that it should be like with mobilizing more, organizing more on a larger scale instead of like just the small organizations. That could be one way of doing it. So yeah, I don't maybe didn't answer your question very
Yeah,
well.
you did. I mean, there's a lot to unpack with this topic, but yeah, I think I digressed a little bit, but I guess I thought it was important to touch on those.
Yeah.
If you could just tell me a little bit, what was your motivation to actually pick up the courage to do what you do in terms of standing up against racism and trying to make sure that Finland in a way face the international diversity issues here?
I don't think there's just one answer to that. It's many things. I think just my existence in this country is kind of activism in itself. I was on the national team since I was 16. I was the only Black girl on the national team. So just me being on a basketball team representing the country wearing the Suomi paita is activism, because I'm showing young Black and brown girls, hey, look, there's someone that looks like me, because they don't really see people that look like them. So just my existence, I feel like sometimes just me leaving the house and going into the world is activism, because I'm showing ways of being. That's one. Secondly, my parents, of course, have been a huge motivator for me. They always encouraged me to kind of stand up for things I believe in and stand up for people if they're being treated badly. Stand up for myself, even though their strategies were maybe could have been different. I mean, but they did the best they could. And then also, what really kick-started it, I think, is when I had my daughter. And I kind of, as a mother, I need to be able to look her in the face, look her in the eyes, and know that I'm at least trying to make society a little bit a better place for her and people like her to live in. So, of course, becoming a mother was a huge factor and a huge motivator. And also, I want to teach her values through just me doing. So instead of me having to tell her even that, you should stand up for people, you should use your voice, she sees me doing it. Her biggest, her main female role model. And that's something that's very important for me, just in how I want to raise my child, what kind of values I want to teach her. So it's a combination of many things. And also I think my personality is just, in addition to these things I just mentioned, my personality is that I can't not say something if I see something wrong. And yeah, I think it's a combination maybe of those things.
Okay. So that gets me to the next point. So what would be the biggest lesson of yours and to the kids that looks like you, obviously mixed-race kids here in Finland? How would you motivate them, for those of them feeling, the impact of racism and not feeling, that are not having enough confidence of themselves? Like, what are the most, if I may, your life experience this far that you can transfer to them to actually help them live better?
Wow, all that responsibility you're putting on me now. No, but I would really maybe first start with the parents, because if we're talking about young children, they need to know that they can have these difficult conversations about racism in they're experiencing with their parents, and that's the responsibility of the parents to make it known, to give them those tools, because if you have tools, you can survive out there in the world. You can defend yourself, you can stand up for yourself, then you're gonna go and tell the teacher, look, this is what happened to me and it's unacceptable, and you as a teacher need to get involved or whatever. So that's the one thing. The parents are the ones who give the tools to the children. Secondly, I think kids that are like young today have a little bit of a different situation because there is a little bit more representation now. There's a little bit more Black and brown people in positions, visible positions, you know. So I hope that continues to where they start seeing more people that look like them doing all kinds of things. So that because you can't be what you don't see. So that's another thing. Also understanding that it's not your fault. It's the fault of society. It's the fault of society, and it's not you that needs to change. There's nothing wrong with you. What needs to change? The change needs to happen in society. We need to change things, take responsibility, and I think also then just I don't know. It's so many different things, you know. But I think for me, what really helped me was I had safe environments. I had home, which was a safe place for me, and then I had basketball, where I could go and just be me. I was never like the Black girl. I was just me. So finding those areas besides home where you are safe, and you know, here I won't be seen as like a Black or brown boy, but I'll just be me, and doing something. For me also, I had some athletics talent that then I kind of could transfer to basketball, and just having those experiences of being good at something was for me a huge thing that gave me courage, and was another type of superpower for me, because it was like no matter what I was going through, I knew at a very young age that I'm going to become a professional basketball player, and these a-holes are going to stay here in this little stick village, and I'm going to go and take over the world. So that was always for me kind of something. I knew I was good at something, and I knew that would be something that would become my job. I don't know how I knew it, but I knew I had a really good work ethic, and I want to just go towards that goal. So I hope everybody finds something they're passionate about, they're good at, and they enjoy, because that's also something that kind of builds on resilience, you know? So it's maybe a combination of those things again. It definitely has to be those parents who give those tools to the kids.
To the kids. Well, yeah, I think that's a very fair point. How do we help Africans, right, that are living in this country, that actually have this sort of, you know, or that are tired basically, and are just keep trying, and they like just running in circles, and they don't find any sort of, you know, someone tapping them and say, I see you. You know, I realize that you're trying your best. I see that you're doing your best. Because the thing is that, let's face it, none of these people, right, does anything, no single person, to my understanding, does anything by themselves. At some point in your life, you need, or you had someone that actually held you by the hand and say, okay, this is the right way to go. Whether it is mentorship, whether it is actually seeing the excellent work you're doing and supporting that you're doing. Instead, the approach here is completely different, I'm afraid. That's my experience, and I've seen it among my colleagues, amongst friends, amongst people like me. How do we help these people?
Yeah, it's very difficult because there is structural barriers in Finnish society, especially in labor market, in education. Through our survey, it was very clear that the respondents were extremely highly educated and doing jobs that are not that don't match their education level. So this is a structural barrier that we have in Finnish labor market, which is racism. I think this is what Finnish society needs to wake up to. We have a aging population, and we need to take advantage of everybody, able-bodied, who wants to work, you know. And that is, most adult people want to work. I mean, that's something that gives us a feeling of belonging, being part of society. So this is I know, and I know it doesn't help someone who's in that situation, but again, it's not your fault. It's the fault of the barriers in Finnish labor market and Finnish employment. That's where the change needs to happen. And we're finally having these conversations about these barriers in the labor market and how they need to be changed so that all available hands can be, you know, utilized to advance Finnish society and Finnish economy. yes, it's so sad because it was so clear in the report that we did that the respondents are extremely highly educated. Most of them had a second degree or university degree, but they were doing something like a menial, a manual, job, and with very low yearly income. So, and then there's other research also that's out on recruiting discrimination, and also discrimination that's happening in employment, because like once people of African descent get into employment and they say for instance they experience racism in employment from either their colleagues or from their employer, because we're so happy that we just have a job, we're not gonna necessarily report. So you're caught in that situation because you're like, well, I have a job now, so I know this is against the law, what's happening to me. But if I complain, what are the repercussions? Like, are there going to be negative consequences? So then this is what happens when people then get stuck in just like one area of employment and also don't get, no matter how hard they work, they don't like move forward in their career because they're just so happy to just have a job. And it should definitely not be like that, because that's when... these are the structures I'm talking about, the discriminatory racist structures in employment, for instance. But then I also want to say it's so important to report when you experience discrimination, because if authorities don't have the full picture of how deep rooted discrimination is in employment faced by people of African descent, for instance, they can't change it, So this is the thing. It's like, okay, you don't want to report it, but if you don't report it, authorities don't know that this is actually happening, and then they can't change the law or change, structures and rules to make it a better situation for everybody in employment. So I definitely think underreporting is a major, major issue. And also maybe people understanding their rights in employment, there should be an increase in rights awareness, understanding what are my rights, who can I contact, and so on, because that these are all kind of tied together, but it's definitely not their fault. Once again, it's making visible what are the problems in employment, in the labor market, and changing those so that everybody has like an equal opportunity to make a life for themselves.
Wow, well described. I think before we finalize, because I know your time is running off as well, maybe it would be important to see or touch a bit about, or just mention something about what we're experiencing right now, the Black Lives Matter movement, because this is one of a lifetime sort of opportunity. So this kind of movement can only take place, who knows? But how do we make sure that we don't miss this chance?
And this is the thing: who has the power? We don't have power, in a sense. I think it has to now be a larger movement of not only things happening changing on a structural level, but of white people starting these conversations, of Finnish white people having the courage to look within and also look at society and start to see the injustices that are happening. Starting from their immediate, family and friends, and I don't know. I think like I said, my hope is really that this is not just a trend, because it should not be a trend. And then I don't know. That's a very difficult question. I don't have a solution for that, but I do know that it's a larger problem of structural barriers that exist. In cutting people off from their dreams and hopes, and also, like I said, just it's not sustainable for Finland to not use all people who want to work, to not take advantage of that, because, like I said, we have an aging population, and in 10-15 years we're going to be in major problems if we don't now start involving everybody, all the bodies who want to be, who are trying to be in the labor market need to be, utilized. So I really hope that there's an awakening to this, even now they keep talking about we need to increase immigration to fix the gap that will be happening in a few years. But what about the people that are already here that want to work, that are not getting into situations that are, and are getting into employment? What about we start also? I mean, that's, of course, I'm definitely for, increasing migration, but what about utilizing also the people that are already here and fixing those structural barriers? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's another one, and I don't think we have a lot of time to go into that. I might have a follow-up question to that, but maybe we can leave that for another time. But just this, just finally to wrap up, do you have hope for the future?
Yeah, you have to have hope. That's just the way I also view the world. The glasses that you were talking about earlier, mine are very like glass half full always. I keep saying that that's my superpower. Obviously, I have very many superpowers, but I think this is one of them also, is that I'm always able to, no matter what situation in life I've been in, I've been able to kind of understand that this is gonna pass, and I understand my work ethic, and even if things don't go exactly my way, I always know that things will be all right, one way or another. So yes, you have to have hope. I can't do this work without hope, because things change so slowly. It seems like you're doing work for years and nothing happens, and then there's like a Black Lives Matter demonstration where people are coming together, all kinds of people, and it's like, wow, this is maybe how my work is now manifesting. Like maybe so these small kind of intervals in between then give you hope, even though it seems like things are not moving fast enough, of course, because I have zero patience. I would love for society to just change like that, but also we know that's not realistic. So yes, absolutely, there's hope. There has to be hope.
I like that. So first of all, I want to thank you on behalf of myself and the entire team. Thank you for stepping up. Thank you for your courage, and then the work you do to make Finland a better place. Thank you. And for our audience, thank you guys for watching, and make sure you follow, make sure you send your questions, and hopefully we are able to get the world to work better and to make Finland as awesome as it is as a country. Thank you.
Thank you.